Jeff Martin, I am so happy to talk to you today. Of course, Black History Month. And
Yes.
here over at KISS, we're doing big things. We're celebrating in big ways. And we want to talk to people in our community who are making a difference every single day. And I feel like you encompass all of that.
Oh, thank you so much, Deepa. This is amazing. I'm so honored to be here and to be speaking to you. And yeah, I love to share, some of the things I'm working on and how I'm trying to contribute as well to the bigger community.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today and really what your activism is all about?
I am a mentor. I am a speaker. I am an author. And really, everything that I do is always about helping other people. It's about serving the community, making people better, and really just trying to find ways to help people to step through the problems that they face in life, the obstacles that we as human beings can go through, and just try to find our greatness within that and try to really push through to become the best version of us. And that's everything that I do has to do with trying to help people to push forward.
Now, I know that part of your activism, like you said, is you do motivational speaking. So, how did you get to that path? Because motivational speaking, that's a very daunting thing to get into because there's like, am I actually motivational? What I'm going to tell people to like help inspire them and that sort of thing. So, how did you go down that path?
Yeah, so my story really starts kind of of course, as when I was younger. I grew up in a really tough neighborhood in the city of Toronto, and the neighborhood I grew up in, oftentimes I would see the police. And when I would see the police, it always felt like we were being harassed. It always felt like we were being picked on. And I'm even sad to say that the first time that I was called a derogatory word, the N word, was when I was in the ninth grade by a police officer.
Oh, no.
And so, it was always, a very bad a relationship, so to speak, with the young people in the community and the police. And I always looked at that circumstance and thought to myself, imagine if somebody had the ability to use that skill, or use the power that police have and use it for something good in the community. Use it to help the young people to become better. And so that's something that always stayed in the back of my mind. So as I pushed forward in my life, I continued to push forward. I eventually became a police officer. I stuck with that dream. But then I realized that I wanted to use my voice to really help some of the young people to get through some of the problems they were going through. And one day I just called up a school, I randomly called up a school in Toronto, and I said, listen, I'm a police officer. I would love just to come and talk to your kids and just to, let them know that, regardless of the tough situation they might be going through, they can persevere. And the school was like, yeah, come on down. And it was talking to these kids that I would say that the whole seed of being a motivational speaker, where it was planted and where it started to nourish, where it started to grow. Prior to that, I had no clue of what a motivational speaker was per se. I've heard people speak and they were able to get the crowd going, but I never really knew what it was. But I recognized that I wanted to share a story with these kids. I wanted to help to inspire them, to get them to keep moving even in the difficult circumstances. And it was through that talk that I had me know, okay, there's something here. I have a gift here that maybe I can continue to share. And the more I stepped into it, is the more it really started to grow. And now I'm so proud to say, Deepa, that I have spoken to crowds all across Canada, virtually now, because of course we're all locked down. I've had conversations throughout the US as well. It continues to grow because I recognize that through sharing my story, all of us have stories, and we can all share our story. And it's through sharing stories how we're able to help other people to persevere. And that's kind of how I became the motivational speaker.
You worked in law enforcement. So, how
Yes.
did your experiences growing up in Toronto? Like you said, you felt like sometimes you were harassed by the police and all of those sorts of things. So, how did that impact your decision to then go into law enforcement?
Well, for me, I got to tell you, I believe that representation matters.
Mhm.
And, going along with the experience of what I had in high school with the police officers and thinking I want to use that skill to maybe make a change. I remember I was probably about 19, 20 years old. I had my father's car. I felt like I was, the king, driving down the road with my father's car. And while I was driving down the road, I was driving a little bit too fast. And so I got pulled over. It was actually on the highway on the 401. I
Mhm.
got pulled over. And I remember looking in my side view mirror to see, okay, who pulled me over, and what type of police officer am I expecting to come to my window. and I saw that the person who walked out of the police cruiser was a black man, a black police officer. And at that time of my life, that's something that I had never seen.
Mhm.
Because again, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, oftentimes the police officers I saw were often white men, and I never seen a black officer before that experience. He came to my window. I put my window down, and he spoke to me in a way that I understood. He spoke street slang,
Oh,
right? He
yeah.
spoke Toronto slang, and I was like, what? Like, it totally threw me off because I wasn't expecting that to come out of a police officer. But through that experience, number one, I saw someone who looked like me.
Mhm.
Number two, I saw someone who spoke like me. I heard someone who spoke like me. And it
Mhm.
showed me that I can be myself while wearing that uniform. It showed me that I can be who I am in that uniform. And so that's one of the experiences that I had that pushed me forward into that career. And so I believe that representation really matters. It's important because when you can see somebody that you believe resembles you in some way that you can relate to, it doesn't even have to be necessarily color, but
Mhm.
someone that you can relate to, then you can see yourself doing what they're doing. You can see yourself striving to do the things that they've been able to accomplish. And so I think representation matters, to the highest degree, because that's how I ended up where I am now.
Oh, 100%. Representation is so important now. When you entered the law enforcement field, do you feel like as a black man you were welcomed with open arms, or do you still think that people had reservations about you in specific?
Well, I would say that I had both circumstances. I would say that there's times that I felt like I was welcomed with open arms and people were, ready to embrace me. And there's other times that I did feel like, there was a barrier because I
Mhm.
was a black man. And, the truth is that even now within the greater Toronto area and probably throughout North America, most police officers are white males.
Mhm.
And so, there's certain things that, groups will do that other groups may not do, and based on that you don't necessarily blend in with the crowd, so to speak. And so for me, there was times that, yeah, absolutely, I didn't feel welcomed. There's times that I looked around and I felt kind of alone, so to speak. Again, I speak about representation matters. When you are the only person who is representing in a certain group or crowd, you can feel like you're alone. And so, yeah, there's been amazing guys who I've worked with over the years who have been so helpful and supportive, but then, unfortunately, you run across people as well who are negative. And, at the end of the day, I again, as I talked about earlier, I always try to use my position to try to help other people.
But obviously, if you're feeling isolated, that's a tough thing to overcome, especially if it's like your job, you're doing this every single day, and that can almost put you down a little. So, when you were in that situation, when you were feeling isolated, you were feeling alone, what got you through those moments?
You're absolutely right. There are times that you do feel isolated and alone. What I always say is that if you are a minority within a group, as tough as it is to be there, as tough it is to be the only one or two people within the group that is different than you, there's a reason why you are there.
Mhm.
The fact that if I'm sitting in a room and everybody else in the room is different than me, it means that certain jokes, certain comments cannot be made
Mhm.
because I'm in the room. And so those jokes and those comments that might be, I'm not in the room prior to that, so I don't know if they're made. But what I'm saying is, when you are sitting in the room, they cannot be made. And so you are now creating an environment where those jokes and those comments are no longer, they no longer belong.
Mhm.
And so it changes the environment. So that's one of the things that somebody had said to me, and that's something that I share with other people as well when they feel like they are isolated in a crowd, wherever that might be, at workplace, regardless of where it is. The fact that you're there means that certain jokes cannot be said, certain comments cannot be made. And so that alone is helping to change the environment.
I've actually never thought about it that way. That's a very, very interesting way to put it. And obviously, it goes back to that point of representation being really, really important in all fields of work, but even in law enforcement. So, like you said, you did it for many, many, many years. So, did you have any experiences of, seeing firsthand you being a representative of the Black community in law enforcement? Did you see that have a positive effect on people that you worked with, people that you encountered? And then did that in the end kind of push you into wanting to do like more community service work?
Yeah, I got to tell you that there are a lot of great police officers on the inside who's really trying to change the landscape. a lot of Black officers and even officers of other backgrounds who are looking to change the landscape of that industry. There's been many times throughout my career I have come across a young man or young woman, and unfortunately, oftentimes it's young men
Mhm.
who do get arrested for a lot of different things. And I will take the time to sit down with them somewhere in the process of them being in jail, waiting to be sent to court or whatever the case might be. I will take the time to sit down with them and say, "Man, what are you doing? Like, is this the best choice that you can make?" And I want them to understand that, yeah, they might feel like they're at the lowest low sitting in a jail cell, but it doesn't have to end here.
Mhm.
And I'm able to talk to them about that because I can relate in the sense where I've come up in a tough neighborhood. I understand the pressures that one can succumb to. And I know that for me, I was one, maybe two bad decisions away from being in their chair. And so because I can empathize on where they're coming from, I can understand that, because of their path, it doesn't have to end here. Like, this does not have to be where their future goes. And I remind them of that.
Were there any instances where you perhaps became a mentor in that realm? Because obviously having conversations with these young men, you're you become so relatable to them, because you're probably one of the only people that they're able to have these conversations with. So did you find yourself in a mentorship position at all?
So in terms of guys who have actually come into a jail while I was there, I would say no, not that specifically. However, I was lucky enough just before COVID to go and speak to some of the guys who are in the jail system at Toronto East Detention Center.
Mhm.
And I sat down with these guys and we had a great conversation. We spoke about, again, these are all young men. I say young men, some of them are older as well. And we spoke about, the perception that men have within society, the perception of things that they believe they had to do to that got them to where they are.
Mhm.
And so, we really broke down, some real good conversation, just speaking about the responsibilities of who they are, not just to themselves or their families, but to the community. And so it's through that program now that I actually have a couple of guys who I am mentoring who have come out of that. And then as well, just throughout my path of going out and doing a lot of public speaking, doing mentorship and coaching as well, there have been a ton of young people who I have mentored and continue to mentor to help them to become the best version of them.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously that takes so much of your own personal time and, people can look at the situation and be like, "I'll forget about it." It's like has nothing to do with me, but I feel like you're this really selfless person who out of your own personal time will go and have those really important conversations and check in with people and make sure that they're doing okay, which is so important. Now, part of I feel like part of your journey is positivity, perseverance, and like resilience in itself. So, can you maybe share some stories of resilience and perseverance that led you to where you are today?
Going back to 2005 was the year that I got hired as a police officer. And as I talked about growing up in a tough neighborhood, there was a lot of things that I had learned. And as I talked about with um, with the experience of policing back then and just feeling we were being harassed, I thought to myself this would be a good path. And so that led me to pushing and shoving and fighting and finally getting hired in 2005. And it was 15 days later, I received the worst news of my life at that time. And I don't know if you recall or not, but 2005 was dubbed the summer of the gun.
Mhm.
And as I said, 15 days after graduating from police college, I remember waking up, looking at my cell phone at the time, and saw that I had about 25 missed phone calls that came in throughout the night. I ended up calling back one of my cousins who had called, and she was crying and crying. And finally, I was able to learn, through her tears, she's finally able to stop and tell me that Omar was dead. And Omar was a cousin of mine who went out to celebrate his 27th birthday. And while he went out to celebrate at the Phoenix nightclub downtown Toronto, he stepped out of the club and a car pulled up and someone pulled down the window and shot. It was through that difficulty of feeling that pain, feeling that anguish, seeing the pain, the anguish in the eyes of my family, knowing that I couldn't do anything to take away the pain. It was something that really, turned my life upside down. And I was holding on to a lot of anger at that time based on that circumstance. And I got to tell you, Deepa, because I grew up in a tough neighborhood, I had learned a lot of tough lessons, and one of those lessons was revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was on one half of me saying I was going to go out there and protect and serve, but the other half of me wanted to go out there and to find the people who did this and do exactly what they did to Omar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that difficulty I had a conversation with somebody, and it was through this conversation this person was able to say to me, Jeff, we put out a level of energy, right? We always put out a level of energy, but we get to choose, is it positive or is it negative?
Mm-hmm.
We get to choose the path for our life. And yeah, bad things are going to happen to us, but at the end of the day, we are the ones that get to choose. And so it was through an internal battle that I had to come to the result of, I'm going to use this negative energy and turn it into something positive to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that I would say that has been the most integral part in my path of becoming a speaker, a coach, an author, because I knew the pain. I felt the pain of what it was like to lose a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, if within my power, I want to ensure that no one else feels that pain.
That's a tough position to be in as well, especially when it's something that hits so close to home, something that you personally dealt with. A lot of people would internalize that, right? And not want to, tell too many people what happened or constantly share that story because it's a constant reminder of what happened. But, like you said, if people are listening to your different speeches and as part of your outreach, they might connect to that on a whole other level, and that might help them get through something that they're personally experiencing. And it's no secret that gun violence is a problem, and also 2020, the issue of police versus Black bodies, that was a huge issue in 2020. Like, what's your opinion on the current state of Black bodies and police relations in Toronto? But like, regardless of the answer that you have for this, what steps need to be taken to improve that relationship?
Yeah, so going back to the first thing you said about sharing your story, I think it's important for all of us to share our story, because I believe that once you are healed from your story, you've been able to get through your story. There's somebody else out there who's going through the exact same thing that you did, and
Mm-hmm.
you potentially could have the key to somebody else's lock. And so if you can share your story and talk about how you came through, not about how you fell down, but how you came through, then you can use that to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer your last question in regards to the unrest, so to speak, within the Black community, or Black bodies versus the police, it's been interesting to watch it from my angle, because I'm a Black man and a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's all said and done, I believe that all of us should be trying to do better for the community, right? For the greater community. And so one of the hot topics was hashtag defund the police, right? That was a huge topic, and people are like, you can't defund the police. Some people are saying you can't defund the police. My take is that we always have to look at things from the greater, for the greater community. So meaning that if we feel that there's a certain area that we are falling down as a community, then that needs to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, mental illness is something that's been on the forefront for a number of years, and the way it's handled with through policing may not be the best way. So perhaps as a society, we look at another way of dealing with it. Maybe not the police going there, but do we create a new entity? It doesn't always have to be
Right.
fire, ambulance, and police, right? Maybe we create a new entity that now deals with the mental illness. But
Mm-hmm.
if that means that we take money away from the police or take money from the fire department, then we do that to ensure that the greater community is being served.
Mm-hmm.
We have issues in the school system, Black children within the Greater Toronto Area that are failing at a higher rate than a lot of other kids outside of the Indigenous children. This is an issue that's been going on, as far as I have researched, since the 80s and 90s. And here we are in 2021, and the issue still is there. So we're bleeding in that area, so to speak. So that area needs to be addressed. Do we take money from the policing to address it? Do we take it from the firefighters, the ambulance? I don't know. But my point is that as a society, when we have a greater issue, then we have to look at, where does this money come from? So am I okay with defunding the police? Yes, if it means that we can make a better community. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be necessarily the police, but from somewhere, so we can address the issues that are happening.
Obviously, like you said, you're an author, you're a motivational speaker, you do so much community outreach, but you also started a nonprofit in Toronto called Brothas in the Six. So I mean, I'm like, where do you have time to do all this? But it's great. So, what's the goal behind this operation, and how have you seen it directly impact lives?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot going on. I got to tell you that. Brothers from the Six is so near and dear to my heart. It is a nonprofit organization that we started, just really trying to make change again with the community. Everything I spoke about before, just trying to make change. And so we've been able to do various initiatives, such as give free haircuts and backpacks to kids who are going back to school. We got a chance to do that.
Mhm.
We got a chance to give out gift cards around the Christmas season just to help families who could use the extra help, gift cards from big box stores. And lately, we've been able we've teamed up with a really big organization, and we've got over the last year, I would say about 8 like huge truckloads of non-perishable foods,
Awesome.
electronics, cleaning supplies, and we've given them out to various food banks over this around the city, and it's been amazing. And have I seen a direct impact on the lives? Absolutely, I have, because we've been able to do something to give. It helps somebody else who's in need. And I think it's always about trying to help out in the sense of, there might be some day that I need help. It may not necessarily be about food, but I might need something else. And I'm hoping because I have the heart to give that it will come back around in that
Mhm,
way. And I
mhm.
think if we all think of it that way about giving to help, then that day that we might need the help, it'll come back around as well. So yeah, I've definitely seen some positive impacts based on the things that we were able to do, and we just continue to do our best to help the community out.
And what has the community response been to, your nonprofit?
Oh, they've been very receptive. You know, a couple years back, we got a chance to give out some items to some kids over the Christmas season. We were able to help them out, and of course, to see the smiles on kids' faces is absolutely amazing. Again, we were able to team up with another nonprofit organization. We showed up and we had a stack of gift cards to a big box store. And we kind of got to learn what families were within the organization that needed some help, and we got a
Mhm.
chance to pull them aside and bless them with a gift card. And again, just the response is just amazing. The hugs and the tears is just
Yeah.
amazing. And so, I believe that's what it's about. It's about helping. It's about serving. It's about giving back and making someone else's life better. Because I'm able to do so. I think we all are able to do so, in our own special way. So yeah, that's been one of the impacts I would say that we had that's been phenomenal.
That is so awesome, and you are such an inspirational person. I mean, it's been like a 25-minute chat, and I'm like, "Wow, Jeff
Thanks, Deepa.
Martin's so cool." So if people, like, wanna reach out to you, wanna have conversations with you, wanna book you for, speeches and that sort of thing, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, my website is jeffadmartin.com. And all my social media is the same thing, Jeff AD Martin. You can reach out. Let's have a conversation. I love to help as anywhere I can. Come out to a school organization, speak about some of the things that are going on in life and how we can overcome.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you.